All right. All right, welcome to the Lawrence Community Shelter Board of Directors regular meeting. Today is August 22nd. It is 5:31. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move.
All right, is there a second?
A second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And want to establish we do have quorum. There's three of us in the room. Chuck, Christina, me, Charlie, and Rebecca is online. And I'm going to share the meeting agenda so you can see that. Okay. The first item on our agenda tonight is a study session. We've asked Kristen Egan to present on the point in time count, which goes into, it's an annual count that's done. It was just completed or just published. The results were just published. The work was done back in January. Kristen, we appreciate you spending some time tonight to educate our board and visitors or anyone watching us on Zoom or YouTube. I'd like to admit a few more people, and if you want to take over the sharing of the screen, I think you should be able to do that.
Okay,
If not, I can try doing some of mine.
no, I can try it, but for those of you online, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It's Rebecca.
Yes, you're great. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Kristen Egan. I work with the Kansas Statewide Homeless Coalition as the Douglas County Regional Coordinator. And we conduct the point in time count for the balance of state, which is 101 counties, but I'm just Douglas County, we're our own region, so we're just gonna mostly talk about what happened in Douglas County for the point in time count that was in January of this year. As you can see, there's a big long document, which is on our website, that goes through the entire balance of state.
Recording in progress.
I'll scroll through here, but we're really gonna pay attention to, we're gonna go through like 20 slides before we get to something. Unless, do you guys want me to go over the statewide data?
I don't think it's
Okay.
necessary.
Okay. We do have some race, gender, some demographic stuff that is in the full report, but it's not broken down by region. I don't know if that data is available, but I'm looking into it because I think if we're gonna get all this data, we should really give as much back out into the regional data, and we're lucky in that our region is one county, so I'm sure we can get a little bit more information. One question that was new this year to the pit count, it wasn't required by HUD, but you guys probably know there's a big, we hear a lot about folks moving to Douglas County, especially for their services. So it was really important for us to ask, and we asked this throughout 101 counties, how long have you been here? It asked if you'd been here within the last 6 months, 7 to 12, or longer than a year. So it's not a ton of data, but it's more than we've had before. And that is broken down by county, which is super important, and that's a lot of what my infographics are about. So that's where that was on that page. Let me scroll down here. I think it gets some page. Okay, perfect. So this is just a kind of real broad stroke summary of Douglas County. We had 414 total people counted that day or night. 272 were sheltered, which is a lot is gonna be in LCS, a little bit in Willow. That's probably about the only emergency shelters I believe in town. I guess the shelter also does include transitional, so there's a huge chunk that Burt Nash provides that data because they have so many transitional housing units.
Would that include family promise?
Family Promise does report as well. So Family Promise, Willow, Burt Nash with their transitional, and then LCS.
What about, organizations like Oxford?
No, those are not considered by HUD homeless. But artists helping the homeless is included in the transitional, and I think that's new to this pit. I'm not sure if they were included in 23. And they house maybe between 20 and 30 folks. Okay, so that's, to go back up to this, the circle graph here. Almost just evenly split into thirds of unsheltered, transitional, and emergency shelter. I don't know if that's odd or not, but
So
go ahead.
you said that sheltered includes both the transitional and the emergency shelter?
Sorry, that was confusing. Down here on these bright green numbers.
Mhm.
Total sheltered here, the 272 includes transitional and emergency.
Got it.
And then if you go up to the circle graph, those two are split into transitional, emergency, and then your unsheltered, those are camping, stay in their cars, staying on the street.
Okay.
Okay, this makes up 30% of the balance, 38% of the balance of state pit count, so we're one of 101 counties, but we're also just one of just 9 regions. And we make up nearly 4 out of 10 folks that the balance of state is serving. And then over here, it's broken down into age. You can see it goes down pretty drastically at 65 and older. I don't have exact numbers on that, and that surprises me. I think we see, I feel like I've seen an increase in elderly folks. So I'm a little bummed at that number, because I actually think we need an increase in senior affordable housing, but most of the chunk is there between 25 and 54.
Kristen, can you help us understand, like you said, 101 counties? So there's 5 that are, or 4 that are not included?
Yes.
Or is
so-
that like the KC Metro or? Okay,
So the balance of state is one huge COC with
Okay.
a bunch of rural counties.
Okay.
Douglas is part of that, although we're most populated of all those rural, we're not considered rural, but the
Okay.
larger counties become their own COC, so that they can kind of plan and get that HUD money for their community. They're large enough to do it on their own.
so 5 largest include Shawnee, so Shawnee part of the
Shawnee.
105?
Sheds,
Or 101?
Rick Johnson.
And
yeah,
Wyandotte.
and,
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah, Douglas.
So
is the
Topeka,
largest.
Wichita, and then Kansas City.
I'm usually accustomed to having the 5 large counties being kind of regarded independently, so,
Are we the 5th one?
so, yeah, we are.
Yep,
So what you're saying is 101 counties, and we are the largest of those 101.
yes.
Got it.
And you can see that there also in the out of the 101 counties. Out of the 9 regions, because the other 9 regions are made up of several counties. So like the southwest corner of Kansas, it's maybe 20 counties in that region.
Okay,
And even with those many more counties, they have a very small homeless population, so Douglas County is in size, the smallest region, and by far the most populated. With homeless folks, I can't speak for the actual population.
what gets it to what's the threshold when Douglas County would be its own COC?
So it's my understanding Douglas County was its own COC, maybe in the early 2000s.
They changed in 2008. They became a
Yes.
part of the balance of state about 2008. And before that, they were their own COC. They received funds directly from HUD. And the reason that at that time that Douglas County wanted to come into the balance of state, they had reached their pro rata, meaning they had reached the limit of the funds they could receive, because the funding is based on the population. So every county has what they call a pro rata, is the amount of funding based on the population for every state, for every county. The balance of state received that funding for every county in the balance of state. Their pro rata is all put together, so you can actually provide services all over the balance of state with the full amount of that funding, where you don't have to say, a smaller county would just get, like Douglas County was at its. They exhausted their ability to expand, so they said they had to come into the balance of state to be able to receive more funding. Because the population was large and they needed more funding. That's about the time that I started at the state, so that's why I know about that.
James,
Okay, so, but, that explains a lot.
It does.
I mean, so since Lawrence is the highest per capita homeless population in the state, we would suffer if it's based on the population, the residential population of the county, we would not have that funding.
You would be limited by the amount of funding for that population.
Okay, so our status as the #1 homeless location in Kansas is enhanced by that funding by.
Are we the #1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, per capita,
Okay.
3 times greater than Wichita. So, yeah,
So I'm curious if there's a report that might incorporate the other counties into a kind of
Sure.
unified Kansas.
So, yes, so. We do have a statewide report also on our website.
Okay.
I don't know how into the nitty gritty that gets.
Okay.
We don't, the problem is that we don't ask all of the same questions because we only run it at the balance of state. Luckily, Johnson and Shawnee counties were able to share with us their data on folks moving into the area.
Okay.
So I do have some information, comparing those numbers to our numbers to see like, are we receiving all new people and everybody else isn't? No, that's not happening, but
Okay.
it's very good information to have and I'll show it to you.
Okay.
in a second. And most of this is on my next little slide here or thing that I have printed out in the room, but, 70, and I'll get more into this too, 17% of the folks questioned that they were reported being employed. 18% reported getting SSI or SSDI or vet benefits. And then 50% said it was first time homeless and 51% said they've been homeless for more than a year. I'm trying to make that a little bit bigger. So I didn't print this out or put this in a report yet on my own, but this is what our HMIS team put together. So this kind of shows you the different populations and how large they are. So you can see that largest circle is the chronically homeless folks with 130. I think on our binding list this month it's up to, sorry, it's 120, it's up to 130 now. 98 reported serious mental illness, 4 HIV/AIDS, 52 were DV survivors, 23 youth, 18 veterans, and 74 reported substance use disorder.
and now this is self-reported.
Yes, exactly. All of this is self-reported. So we do have to keep that in mind.
That previous slide, are those
Yeah.
distinct counts or is like someone could be both?
Yes,
like, in
absolutely.
both
Somebody
areas?
could be both, have a serious mental illness and chronically homeless, almost always are, but yeah.
Okay. Do you know what the distinct count is for this graphic?
The what count?
What the distinct count is for the entire population represented in this graphic?
This is, I mean, the most any circle could be is 414,
414, okay,
right? Cause that's the full
Oh,
count this
got it.
year, yeah.
all right. Thank you.
And I might be kind of out of order, it could be confusing you guys. Here's a little breakdown of demographics based on age, race, and gender. I think probably what would be very helpful, which is not done here, is this is a report. Each region has this report, so they haven't broken this down, but probably a good thing to do would be compare that race demographic to what the overall population of Douglas County is and see where the differences lie. Because I think we all know that the people of color are going to be higher represented in this unhoused population than in the overall population, but of course we need that. We need to show that we can't just like assume. You guys have any more questions on that?
Let me go back just one moment, just to get some specificity, so under age 18, 17% there. Now, are these youth, who are in some transitional housing or wards the court or in something that would define their without family, without, housing? Or are these children or under 18 who are also family members of the adults who are represented?
I think we could delve farther into that to see how many for family promise reports. I'm guessing that almost all of those are in shelter and family promise.
Okay.
But it would also include folks, like if there's somebody who's 17 and they're partnered up with somebody that's 18 and they're unhoused, I mean, it would include them as well.
Okay.
But I'm guessing we got most of those numbers from family promise.
Thank you.
We are trying to get much better at getting data on youth homelessness. The youth population falls under a different definition of homelessness, so luckily with youth homelessness, you can count couch surfing. And you can't with adults, so it's probably very underreported. Because we're just not catching folks that are couch surfing, and a lot of service providers don't know that they're by HUD's definition homeless if they're couch surfing.
Okay.
But we are looking, that is a problem, and then there's some, I think, coordination going on with the Lawrence O'Connell shelter. They changed their name. But trying to help get them more involved in the COC as well.
Okay, does US 497 also collect information on families or youth who were without housing?
I don't know if they collect information.
Okay, maybe that's the wrong term to use collect, but like just identify those students who
Yes,
are without.
occasionally, although generally, if somebody comes to me with an unhoused youth, it's actually almost always through Heartland Community Health Center or Amanda. And usually in those cases, the McKinney-Vento folks have reached out to the Panda or Heartland team, or vice versa. So definitely like a good point that we could build some collaboration between the agencies that serve kids.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let me go. Let's go to this one that we have in front of us in the room. I probably should have started with this one. Okay, because this is like the main stuff, the meat of it. Okay, so Douglas County point in time count for this year, and this first one deals with just the numbers by year. You guys probably already know this, but pit counts can be really inconsistent. Different groups run pit counts each year. So unless you're having the same team do it for 10 years in a row, it's probably gonna have a little bit, it's a little bit hard to compare. Same with neighboring counties, so. My agency does do pit count in all of those 101 counties, but I have no idea how they're doing it in Topeka or Johnson. So you just have to remember, it's not super consistent across pit counts. But it can still give us a snapshot, something to look at here, so you can see that in 2016. Which is as far back as I went, it was at 268, it pops around and then all the way up to 408 in 2020. In 2021, pit was not completed, so just if there's a missing year there, which I understand. 2022, 232. Again, it's a snapshot and it's done differently. That was the year when, I mean, we weren't vaccinated yet, COVID was still, I don't know. I think that there were only 232 unhoused people in Lawrence that year, no, but lots of things happened during pit. And then in 23 went up to 351, and then this year is our highest number at 414. Let's go down to the graph below that. How long have you been in Douglas County? So the pink section, 71%, which comes out to 289 of the 414 have been in Douglas County for 1 year or longer.
Now,
51
do we have the breakdown of that? I imagine you do,
breakdown of what?
of that response within the unsheltered versus,
We can. Yeah,
because I could see how that could have a big impact on that response. Meaning, there's someone that's in, you know, transitional housing, for
Mhm.
instance, would easily. I could easily imagine that falling into that category in
Mhm.
12 months or beyond. That's the idea. that
Yeah, I
we're
do.
Trying to achieve.
I do wish that it had been possible to have more answers to that question, because when we had, on an earlier slide, it was reported that about 50% of the folks have been in this current episode of homelessness for a year or longer, so they could have come in here and then been homeless for over a year, but it's just hard to get the data because we weren't asking it before this year. So as the years go on and we keep asking that, I would also like to know, have you been here 1 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years? We are somewhat limited on how many questions we can ask during PID because people get frustrated. And if it starts to become a 15-minute thing, they're out there.
I think I looked at that HUD form one time and there's 64 different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But remember, this is new data and I think it's awesome data, and I think as the years go by, we will get more and more data on that. We also are asking that in all program enrollments within HMIS. So that data will become available, and it would be more real-time data than this once a year, if they can remember when they got here, when they became homeless. I mean, this is all self-report. When we have that information in the program enrollments, like when James's staff enrolls somebody in rapid rehousing, HMIS prompts them to ask, how long have you been here? Where did you come from? And so we'll have so much more data on that as time goes on. It just wasn't being asked before January, and in HMIS a little bit more recently. So yeah, I mean, what I see here is that, and again, the data doesn't go back far enough to necessarily say this for sure, but what I think this says is that 71% of our folks that are unhoused in Douglas County lived in Douglas County, rented, some of them owned homes, they had jobs, they paid taxes, they were our friends and neighbors, we grew up with them, and they've been priced out of their hometown. And they're just stuck in Douglas County and they're just having a really hard time getting out of it because the vacancy rate is so low. As soon as you get an eviction, it's gonna be very hard to find a landlord to rent to you, because a landlord can find people without an eviction because the vacancy rate is so low.
But a lot of this data came at a time when evictions were prohibited.
A lot of what did?
A lot of the data came at times when evictions were prohibited during COVID. So I'm not sure that analysis necessarily fits in there. The other thing I guess I wonder about, you know, price of housing in Johnson County is beyond what we're dealing with here at Lawrence. And there's certainly a difference. So I'm not sure that correlation between housing pricing and the count.
It might not. I'm guessing it has to do with the price of price of housing, the wages, the tiny amount of vacancies we have, and just like the slow movement of building in communities.
Maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's worth studying. We should have that as a reference point. I mean,
Yeah.
right now today, I think the last data is there's 2,000 bedrooms available in Lawrence right now. You know, so there's a lot of bedrooms available out there. So I'm not sure that that's a direct correlation on the bedroom count versus population. I think some of the other things you referenced come into play.
Where are you getting the data on the number of rooms that are available?
It's a combination of things coming out of real estate, like the Zillows, apartment.com, things like that, the services that track data on availability of apartments.
Does that give information on the cost of those rooms?
Not immediately,
Okay.
you know, you can dial down and find it, that's gonna be highly variable. You know, I mean, I was stunned to see something the other day on some apartment complex. I mean, nationally, we know that apartments are having to offer incentives right now because they're overbuilt nationally, but whether that applies to Lawrence, we're not sure, but. You know, I pulled up one of them off of the apartments.com, and it was an apartment complex in a good location. 2-bedroom apartments, $750 a month. It's like, you're kidding.
They are kidding, and I think that was a scam.
Well.
I'm so sorry to tell you that, it's
I
not
mean,
true.
I saw that and like, wow, that's, you know, yeah,
It's actually not
that's
true.
below what would be, I would assume it's a 1-bedroom, you know, so.
They
But
would need to
that-
rent a 1-bedroom for that.
But I mean, I think maybe that there could be some legitimate, it's gonna be spot basis, meaning, you know, a landlord is going to have their own metrics in terms of how desperate they are to get that
Mhm.
particular
Absolutely.
unit filled. And they
Absolutely.
may make their own decision on that.
I think it's important too that you said that that the reporting are agencies like Family Promise and who do service and who are organizations who are experts in this space and also hold resources like housing choice vouchers, or they have all the information. They're also advocates for the family, so that they do, if they were turned away for rental property and application, they come and advocate for them too. So if we're getting information from service agencies and from Family Promises and others who are doing this work, I could think that this information is pretty valuable when it says that that residents are they're priced out of opportunities to rent. We could have 44 beds, but if they're not affordable, nor would they have the application that is shining bright for a landlord owners who want to take it. I think you're absolutely right about how once you move out or you evicted, which we have been, and some of our courts can tell you that there's been an eviction process in the last year.
I'm just saying that during the COVID time.
Yeah.
Evictions were. And
I think that's
understand what
why we
you're
don't have the 2021 information too, because maybe that's the information
saying.
about
Well, I
what
think
we're
twenty
missing.
twenty-two would probably be the one that would still be
I
associated.
can't remember when Kira applied. Was it 22 or 23?
With that,
Kira.
it was lifted,
Uh-huh.
for some reason, it seemed like it was August 22,
Okay,
somewhere right about there.
So Kristen, you also said that vacancy rates are low,
yes.
which I guess I'm curious if that's any different than what Chuck is saying. That there's 2,000
Well,
rooms
I mean,
available, right? So
definitely, but I would
what-
have to ask, I think that Jill gave me that information, so I
Okay.
can't source it other than Jill, but I can figure out where I mean, that's a countable number throughout the country, so
Sure.
and it could, maybe it's at 2%, any vacancy rate that is lower than 5%, you're gonna have a homeless crisis, so.
that's where I was going. I was kind
Yeah.
of curious, like, at what point does the vacancy rate get so small that it does start to cause upward pressure? So maybe then going back to your 2,000, like, you're just given the numbers, not the percentages.
Right.
It might be that
Yeah.
if there's 40,000 rental units at
And that would be
5%,
good
that's
information. to know.
2,000.
It would be-
Yeah, what is our target?
It
What's
would
our
be
target?
awesome information to know, I
Yeah.
mean, really, because that's the kind of good information to get out to the public when we're trying to start having a public facing dashboard, which the county is. To say, these are the needs and these are the gaps and here's how we fill them. Because I think we do kind of know the solution to this, when we look at the populations that are homeless, we can look at the solutions for each of those populations.
Well, and let's put it this way, I have directly assisted several of my employees in achieving housing,
Yeah,
and it's a challenge.
Yeah, it
And I mean, I realize that things such as, you know, previous criminal records
Yeah.
or you know, obviously, even things that people oftentimes won't have in that situation, meaning credit references,
Yeah.
it's like they're just locked
or
out.
3 times the monthly rent is
Yeah.
nearly impossible, I mean, that's an outdated thing, but landlords can still go by that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
because-
it's challenging.
yeah, for
But-
sure, for
but
sure.
It would be good to know, you know, Charlie, like you're saying, what would be our number, what would be our
Yeah.
count of bedrooms?
I mean, because when you said 2,000, that sounds like a lot,
Right.
but if
If
that's
the freshman
equivalent
classes,
to
5,000
2%.
and
Yeah.
you could build enough dorms, and so they rent out whole apartment complexes, I mean, yeah, that's affecting things.
Yeah.
That would take a chunk of the 2,000 right there.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think, excellent point, and maybe we all should, once I figure out where this number is. Start paying attention to that vacancy rate and see like, and probably Leah at the city knows this, like
Yeah.
what, the goal would be to have like a healthy housing system, right?
I've always thought that the city should have this data based on water meters, right? I mean, is someone flushing a toilet in that housing unit? I mean, that should be an easy thing for them to be able to track through water meter.
That's an interesting proxy.
Well. It
You're
could,
right, I've lived places where we didn't flush the toilet.
Or, you know, I got a broken toilet, it's flushing all this. All right,
But one of the things that's, we're illustrating right now is that we have these numbers without subsequent surveys and other studies. We're just looking at a snapshot of the data. And when we look at the data and we wanna find out answers, we have to develop different surveys
Yes,
to find those answers. And that's what we,
yeah,
and I just wrote down, maybe we need to follow up with a summer count or
Yeah.
another count.
they're doing
To
that in
compare.
Leavenworth,
They
actually.
did it in Topeka.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But that's how you do it, and you look at the data that you gather and you say, well, we wanna expound on this, and we have questions. And we're gonna ask follow-up questions to kind of flesh out what this data really means, and I think
I
that's
think that's a
what
great
we should
idea.
start to do. to
Yeah,
look
and
at
just
what
let me
we need.
know.
Yeah,
I guess
I'm
we're-
happy to plan it, whatever,
and we can do things like this with just surveys where we
yeah,
just give to people to interview, to ask certain questions, and we don't wanna make it exhaustive, but we can make it pertinent to certain things.
yeah, ask questions methodically, because you don't wanna ask so many that
Yeah,
are.
you don't, you just wanna make it real
Yeah,
simple, 2
yeah.
or 3 questions.
Yeah,
But we know that these questions we're asking are gonna correlate some of the things, some of the
Uh-huh.
other numbers that we're looking at.
and also, like, as we go through this, and as you guys are just thinking about this in general. My agency does all the data, right, we're the homeless management information system agency, so we have data. We wanna know what's important to communities. That isn't overwhelming to communities, and we're not always thinking of the best questions because we're in it. So if you guys ever have feedback or ideas that would be helpful for the Douglas County Public Facing Dashboard or information that KSHC could keep on their website, just let us know. I'm not positive we can do it, but I'll push very hard for it, cause I think there's no sense in having all of this data, and statewide, people do a lot of work to get data, not just pit count, obviously, that's also a lot of work, but year-long data entry. While they're already doing really hard jobs, and with all that data, we should be educating the public so that they better understand what people are facing. Yeah,
I guess one of the things, and, the first time I had a chance to meet Misty, a year and a half ago, whatever, just after she had started. We were talking about pit count from, 2023, and, I think this would have been in July of 2023, and, we were at a meeting and said, well, we don't have that information yet, and Misty didn't make a comment like, what are you talking about? But she made a face kind of like, what, that sort of thing. And it's like, no, the 2023 pit count information isn't available yet. She had come from Topeka, and the Topeka pit count was usually getting released in February or March of each year. I think ours last year was September, maybe something like that. And so there's that disconnected, at least in times that I think this is an urgent issue. And the delay on information is pretty extraordinary. Now, I realize that it's tied into the federal government, it's
Yeah.
tied into HUD,
Can't help you there, man.
it's tied into this, that, and the other, but I mean, you know, James, you mentioned summer count, I mean, Topeka did a summer count this year and returned the data in 2 weeks.
But I will say,
Because it didn't have to go through HUD.
yeah, it doesn't, but we're part of a balance of state, which is a lot of counties. It's not just one county with just an individual entity doing the count. In order to coordinate a balance of state count, which we did a statewide count for every county the same way in like 2008 or 9 when I first started. We paid for it at Kansas Housing just to see if we can coordinate a statewide count with the same methodology, same time, same way, just similar, but my goal was to have it 2 years in a row, just so we can compare.
Yeah,
We couldn't get people to do it again the next year the same way, so we had good data the first time, the numbers went up because the methodology was sound. But when you can't repeat it, or when you have a balance of state and you work with so many different counties. Kristen talked about rural counties, but we have frontier counties.
Yeah.
In the state, which is 1 or 2 people every mile or so, something like that. So it's really hard to coordinate with people, and in the balance of state, you have to do matching. Because it's physically impossible to have somebody in all 101 counties to count the population, so. We started matching and doing that. I don't know if we're still doing that, the methodology where you pick counties of similar population and makeup demographics. And if you have a county that you count that's similar, you would estimate that another county is similar in numbers. And that's a methodology that's accepted by HUD. You can do that, and that's how we get the numbers we get sometimes, so.
but yes, agreed, it's frustrating, it takes, I think that was 8 months, 7 months. I also am like, you guys, it's counting, give us those numbers back. Well, we can't make it do it, it's HUD.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I'm learning a lot.
Yeah.
This evening and, you know, from both of you and what you're explaining in this process and, because I've been scratching my head about Topeka, you know, I mean, I see the issues with Topeka and Lawrence being most closely aligned within our region. And Topeka had been on their own with a head count.
Yes, they are, yes.
But somehow or another this year, they were tied within the agency, were they not? Because there was a comment that I think the Topeka Cap Journal filed a Freedom of Information Act and got their count released in May.
I mean, honestly, I don't know, Topeka's its own COC, so they do their own pit count.
Okay, so they're not coming through.
No,
your agency.
they're not, and some, I know that some places. Would release numbers saying HUD has not approved these, but this is what we think it is.
Right, preliminary.
That gets a little bit messy, because then if the numbers change, there's a lot of questions.
Right, absolutely.
But listen, I also was frustrated with how long it took. This is my first year doing PIT, I'm like, seriously, it's counting, so. So I get that it's frustrating, but it's totally out of our hands. But let me tell you this.
But again, that's where I was saying, since I regard this as a human issue of great urgency,
Yeah,
I find a compelling cause to have the information and the data
I
in
have
this timely.
a
fashion.
solution for you.
Yes,
HMIS.
HMIS and the Built for Zero dashboard, which just went live very recently. Do you know anything about the Built for Zero stuff?
yes.
Okay, perfect. So we have been trying to tell at least service providers where we are with numbers based on the coordinated entry list. Which I was always harping on everyone, get your clients on the coordinated entry list. I know there's more. When I took over, there were 100 people on the coordinated entry list. Right now, there's 320. So that means that people like James staff and Bert Nash staff have been working really hard because they've more than tripled that. Our population did not triple, they just started doing the assessments, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And all those programs within HMIS are also gathering information every time somebody's enrolled or exited. And all of that information is going into the Built for Zero dashboard, which I'm not a data person, you guys, I'm not trained in that. It's very complicated to make a dashboard apparently, but we got it. And so we're now gonna have real-time numbers, at least monthly, inflow, outflow for each population. And that is using not the CES list or community queue. It is using the by name list, and that includes people that are not only in CES list, but all the programs like transitions where they are still considered homeless by HUD, but they weren't on the CES list necessarily. So when that's released, people are probably going to be surprised by the numbers. I know I was. I thought that the providers were not getting people in HMIS. It turns out they are. The first number that I reported to Community Solutions was last month, and that was 477 people. So we know that there were at least 477 people experiencing homelessness in Douglas County in June. We know how many people are coming in, where they're coming from, so if they were previously housed or if they came from a different area and were unhoused. We know the outflow, what programs housed them, if they just went off the grid, then they fall off the grid. So it's gonna give us a lot more numbers, and it'll be for like populations like total population, chronic, veteran, youth, families. So that will give us a lot of information you want, which is much more accurate than a pit count. And it will be much more accurate and timely because it's happening every month. So that is coming, and you won't have to rely on PIT as much because it's just hard to. That's not, the 414 people, that's not our entire population.
So where, and my bias here is to say that LCS was doing a good job of providing that data to begin with, that maybe some of the other agencies are having to play catch up. But anyway, that information is where would we look for the gap in that? In other words, are the people that are in somewhat isolated encampments, are they still going to be accounted for within that dashboard information?
Yes, so a big part of the Built for Zero system is that you have a scorecard, and a big chunk of that scorecard, you can't get quality data unless you have a high enough score on the scorecard. A big chunk of that scorecard is outreach. So we have a pretty robust outreach in Douglas County, much more so than any of the counties in the balance of state. Now, I can't speak for those counties that aren't, but the city outreach team is putting information into HMIS, so is the Vermiash outreach team. So even people that are camping, they are in that system, they are still part of the camp, probably more so than the pit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we're making waves here, changes at least.
And then when is that expected to be made public? Is that the intention?
Yeah, so we just met with the county on Tuesday and we're ready to report June numbers. I do wanna say the Built for Zero, like I said, dashboards are really complicated, so we're still sussing out some little things, but basically, I don't know how much you guys want me to get into this, but basically, the reports within HMIS from the Built for Zero dashboard, Looker sends me and the other regional coordinators reports. We plug those into a spreadsheet, and then from that, we determine there's gonna be some data errors. So if somebody moved in and then their move-in date wasn't reported until 5 days later, things can get messy. So we go through about a week-long process where we take that spreadsheet and we figure out which clients have errors. We fix up as many of those errors as possible. At that point, I report to Community Solutions, which has a performance tracking, performance measure tracker. And at that time, I take that spreadsheet, because those are the numbers that we are reporting to Community Solutions, and that will be uploaded to the county. And then their data, so either like Matt Cravens, somebody like that, will take that data and put it on the public facing dashboard. So as soon as we have the way to get that to them, I'm just waiting on, no pressure, then this was 2 days ago. But as soon as we have that, we can start giving them numbers, and we'll do that by the 15th of every month.
That sounds
So-
exciting.
Very exciting.
Mhm.
It won't be as much information as we want yet.
Mhm.
But it will be inflow, outflow of those special populations. A little bit worried about when people see that by name list number, because it will be bigger than we want it to be. But we need to know where we are. And the goal of that, of course, is when we start to see people are outflowing to housing out of a certain program, then we know that program is working. And keep funding that one. If this program isn't getting anyone housed, then maybe we need to look at that. If the chronic population is never getting housed, then we can see a huge gap there. And the idea is we have this information that will guide us to programs that we need and programs that are working.
Chuck, I wanna say this about the difference in the point in time count versus the bill for zero and the way that information is gathered. You have to realize the point in time count is done primarily by a lot of volunteers that don't know the population. And so it's always a voluntary count. People can say no, even at LCS, we knew people spent the night there, but when it's time to do the survey, they say, I don't wanna do it.
Mhm.
But we counted them anyway because we could do an HYS count because we know they were there, we physically saw them, they didn't have to do the survey, so some of the data was missing, but we knew they were homes. When they do the bill for zero and it's constant contact with the outreach team, with the Bird team, or people that they know and are familiar with, they're more apt to let people know what's going on with them, so they have, the data is different. So that's the difference in point in time, all over the country, when you have volunteers and you have people that have an aversion to talking to people, they either say yes or most time, a lot of people say no, so. Even people that we provide a shelter to the night before, I don't want you to do your survey, and they just left.
Yeah.
So that's kind of some of the differences.
But I helped out with that this year. You know, depended if I had, or
You were there too.
I think, I don't know if it was Kristen that brought the donuts, someone brought donuts, and when they ran out, we lost some momentum. You know,
But that's also why when I was doing this, I was kind of I didn't like doing counts that provided things, incentives. I liked doing incentives maybe a week before to educate people by, hey, next week we'll be doing accounts, so if you see people with a survey, you know. But there's a lot of stand downs where they do a lot of different things to do the count. It gets people in, it's a way to do it, but you can also get people that say I'm homeless just for the things that they're getting, because we have people that are in poverty and might have a place to live, but they don't have socks or food or whatever for that day, and they want it. And so they'll say what they need to, as survival to get those things, so I think all that can be adjusted if you do multiple counts to correlate the data to see the
Yeah.
differences. If you find somebody that's unhoused in the winter, in the dead of winter, they probably really have nowhere to live. In the summer is different, it's different, so.
I think that a really big takeaway that I'm focusing on too is that, there are, out of the 414, there are 298 people who are working. Right? Because I see that there was,
72 are employed.
72,
Mhm.
yeah, okay, 72 were employed, I'm sorry, live longer. Where did I get the number from? 71% live longer in Douglas County. So what I'm seeing is there are 74 people who are employed. I'm sorry, that's 290%, I did some different math, I'm sorry, but there are people who are employed who are living in Douglas County, and this is the numbers that we're getting. I did different math. I did like, what is like.
your mathing is not math.
I know,
Your
I
math
did-
is not mathing.
My math's not math.
No, it's because I switched from percentages to numbers.
Okay,
and
thank
there's
you. I
some
was like, what is
little bit-
72% of 414?
Yeah,
I'm like, no,
no,
that doesn't
no.
work. I need to go
No,
back to.
it's
algebra.
72 folks reported that they had employment, and what that
Gotcha.
could mean is that our wages are not providing enough for our housing. Because there's lots of people that are working full-time. I had a client all year last year that made $21.50 an hour, and she was unhoused for a full year before she got housed at Union at the Loop.
There
And
were probably other circumstances that prevented that income to be used immediately for housing.
absolutely, she had her kids 50% of the time, and during that time, she got a hotel room, so her kids were safe. And she was unhoused in her car the other 2 weeks of the month, and she did that over and over, and that's where all your money goes, it's expensive to be poor. Yeah.
Sure. And those are the kind of things we can ask on a subsequent survey. We can do multiple surveys every other month or
Mhm.
quarterly. Just if we want to get data on something, we can just ask the question
Yeah,
and see what we get back.
I think it would be very important for the public to understand how many folks are employed.
Right.
And those 74, that number right below that, 74 folks that are unhoused right now. Are receiving SSI or SSDI, so you have to remember, these are people that cannot work, the government has agreed they cannot work. The government, we all know, does not give disabled people enough money to live on, you couldn't even cover rent, let alone whatever else you need. Those folks need income-based housing, that is the only way they're going to survive, and we don't have enough, I mean, that's the gap right there, it's 74 income-based units that we need, but these are people that cannot work, this is no choice of their own. Usually when you talk to them, they feel really terribly that they can't work and they wish they could, and they cannot afford to live, and that is not a Lawrence thing, that is not a Kansas thing, that is a national thing, but we could still try to address that by having income-based units in our community. 18 veterans, 98 report serious mental illness. Remember that these are self-report. 120, that is not self-report, that is the number. 120 were chronically homeless, as of this PIT survey, and like I said, right now, the by name list, has 130 chronically homeless folks, so that means they've been homeless for at least 12 months. And that they also have a disability, be it physical or mental. And then 23 youth, and again, like we talked about, that's mostly through Family Promise. It is not 23 youth, Family Promise is not a big enough shelter to shelter the families, I mean, they're constantly in hotels, using various funds scrambling. So yeah, I don't know if I had anything else, do you guys have any more? Oh, I didn't go on this graph, I love this one, okay. So length of time in county comparing to neighboring counties, so remember the red portion, and these are percents, these are not numbers, you see that because they all add up to 100, so like Reno County, obviously, they didn't have 414 people this year, I didn't put that, but so Reno County, they're about almost 50% of their folks are brand new to them. You see in Topeka, most of their folks have been there for a year. Riley County, I think that was the one with the lowest number of like long-term residents. They're at almost 50% brand new within the last year residents. I put Riley on there because it's a college town. And then, yeah, Saline and Reno were the other two that were the highest population within the COC, so I have that data. Johnson and Shawnee just emailed it to me. But Johnson and Douglas about this, I mean, honestly, about the same, it's just they have even more newcomers than we do. So that tells me that maybe folks are moving to places with services, but maybe it's just a real transient population. And if they are done with the shelter system in Riley, maybe they come here, and maybe when they're done with the sheltering system here, they go to Topeka or Riley. It's a transient population.
And I think that's one of the surveys I would like to do first is, if you were here less than 6 months, where were you before, and why did you come here?
Yes.
Just a basic question.
I think we would all love that question, and is everyone gonna answer it? No, because they already feel attacked, right, like they're not getting treated well by passersby. So they're, I think, a little anxious to give that information, but it's worth asking, even if only 50% answered it, that would be incredible information.
But you know, we could also, since it's not a sanctioned survey, we could have people that are more familiar with our population, and they're more apt to get truthful answers, you know, it would be people known to them.
Yes, it's, and if you've ever done the pay count, it is different to see somebody that works with the population ask the questions versus somebody that either is new to the population or whatever, just, and maybe it's just also just a personality, you can't be that timid, it's just, it's varied, it's varied. So it gives us information, but it's not as much information and it's not probably as accurate as we wish it was, but it does give us a good chunk of info.
Is there any data that indicates what kind of led to someone becoming homeless, or is that well known?
We do ask that question. We might have asked
I'm
it.
curious if it, how much, like, I hear about evictions and I'm thinking, okay, is that the main driver? Or is it some other?
Is it asked on the point in time?
I'm not to look, but it's definitely asked in the CES assessment,
Right.
but let's just see, we can look at the survey here,
I guess, some of the folks that I've had either as current or former employees, I think oftentimes the response will be, well, I'm homeless because I lost my job.
Mhm.
And that is a simple first level response. The question of, well, why did you lose your job? Was because you didn't show up to work for 3 days in a row, or, were there.
well, then you have to ask them why
Problems.
they didn't show up, their kid was probably sick and the daycare was closed.
Well, could be, but, a lot of the folks that I deal with are single males, and it's a different answer coming from that group, quite frankly. So I think there are multiple layers within the first response.
And having done these surveys, you really don't want to leave surveys open-ended. You want to make them multiple choice and give categories of reason. So it's easier to quantify the data, because if you just leave it open, you'll have 1,000 different responses and there ain't no category. It's like, how do you count all? I learned my experience. So you want
That
to
is
give
not a good idea.
answers in general responses. Is it related to this, is it related to that? I mean, whatever you're looking for, but to give them categories so you can add them up and put them together, so.
You guys, if I ever get to that survey, I will tell you what those questions, what the answers are. But there it goes.
What do you see your agency as far as, next steps and goals for achievements and refining outcome and things like that?
Yeah, so we do the pit count, and then we also do the gaps analysis, which also just came out. And what that's looking at is how many folks are experiencing homelessness in each region. Luckily, again, our region is just our county. How many beds are available, and it just shows, I mean, that's pretty obvious, like what the gap is. And our idea is to direct funding to the programs that would fill those gaps. Of course, every community has a ton of gaps, so we can't fund all of that. But hopefully we can help the communities learn other grant opportunities outside of the COC that can help. And Lawrence and Douglas County are great at that, at finding other funding streams. You have to, no funding streams can solve it all. So that's generally what we're trying to do, is use the data and the gaps to guide where the money goes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Rebecca posted in the chat the number of evictions filed in Douglas County over the past
Ooh,
5 years. So it looks like in 2019, there were 584 convictions. 2020, 346 convictions, or evictions, I'm sorry. It might feel that way, I suppose. 2025, there were 531 evictions filed. 2022, 625 evictions. 2023, 764 evictions. So outside of 2020, it does seem like it's escalating. Pretty
And
significant.
Charlie, I just wanted to clarify, that's like cases that a petition is filed, so it's not always that an order of eviction is
Okay.
ordered, but I mean, I can find some of that data too, and it's more than half generally, but
But it
just to
sounds like
clarify.
it's getting busier. For people,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Thank you for bringing that into the conversation.
So,
Martha.
yeah, was that idea that the,
Well, that was kind of where I was thinking is what's driving people in that situation, you know, one thing is it might be transit, just hopping from one town to another. But it's like, is there other data we could look at to say, you know, like, is it they're being evicted? Now, that doesn't get to your question, Chuck, like, there's things behind the first
no,
answer
I mean,
might be I was evicted, but the deeper
I
answer
was
might be.
operating under this idea that you know, legislation federally prevented evictions during the COVID.
They still filed them.
Okay, so.
They were still filed, but nobody had to actually leave. People were still being evicted.
Well,
And so here's what happened.
there's definitely a drop, and the 2020 number was the lowest, so.
There's what happened when I was working with the landlords would tell individuals that, and they knew when you don't pay your rent, you know you're getting evicted. Some people were savvy enough to know when the moratorium was on for evictions, they didn't have to leave, but a lot of people didn't know that. One of the things I stress, we need to educate people on their rights, and so they left anyway.
Okay,
A lot of people left anyway, because one, if you leave before the eviction, it doesn't go on your record. You weren't legally evicted. Filed an eviction and eviction taking place are two different things. So people still filed, you just didn't have to leave. The courts became so backed up. They couldn't do it anyway, so.
okay,
Okay, we did not ask, we did ask, are you experiencing homelessness because of any of the following, but it's not the answers I was expecting. So it's domestic violence, dating violence, human trafficking, sexual assault, stalking, and prefer not to answer. So it didn't ask, you know, if you got evicted, if your family structure fell apart. But we do ask that in the CES assessment, so there's some data on that. You know, that means currently 320 people have answered that, you know, and we can always just easily pull that spreadsheet and that data. It's not a complicated thing.
So Rebecca, put some more information in the chat. The number of orders of restitution filed, which is the order that the sheriff serves to remove someone from their home after the court orders the eviction. That number in 2019 was 342. 2020, it was 194. 2021, it was 256. 2022 was 262. And in 2023, it was 327. So I think that seems to be tracking with the number of filings for the eviction filings. And this sounds like it's actually the you know, the person who was,
yeah,
sheriff showing up to get someone out of the home. It doesn't get behind the question like what's causing the eviction rate. Is it job loss? Is it some other thing? Is it the cost of living there? You know, a lot of reasons maybe. Well, it's been a great discussion, Kristen. I appreciate you coming to spend time with us. Is there any follow-up anyone wants to ask for or?
Summarizing this, I mean, you did a great job of giving all the details and my brain is not working in percentages, obviously, but it's working in the micro. Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. I was like, wait.
I mean, sometimes I'm looking at that, I'm like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I'll make like random people that aren't in housing look at it, cause I'm like, is this clear, is this crazy, what's happening? So any feedback I'm happy about.
No, the feedback
Okay.
I would want to say is summarizing this because you pulled this data for us to really kind of focus upon. What was really the takeaway from this data that you pulled apart that you would like for us to understand from your perspective?
Well, that even if you have a job in Lawrence, it might be too expensive to live here. If you have disabilities in Lawrence, it's too expensive to live here, and there's not enough housing. There just isn't enough housing, it's not, we can work on getting these people housed, and that's mostly what I work in doing, like. But we need to go upstream and have housing that people can afford, Lawrencians, people that went to school with us, honestly, like these, I can't tell you the number of people that have passed away homeless that I went to high school with. I mean, it is our neighbors, our friends, our family members, they're being priced out of Lawrence. It is not it is not a Lawrence specific problem. I don't want people to think I'm blaming any kind of like, because I don't know the local government structure well enough to know it's a national problem. Wages aren't keeping up with housing. But there's research that shows when you don't have enough housing and it's expensive to live, you have homelessness. They don't have homelessness in California because it's nice out and because they have services. They have homelessness there because there's not enough housing and it's too expensive. And that's it. You can look at that. There's examples of that everywhere. It's not because there's more people in Seattle that have mental illness or that are addicts. It's because if your housing market is too tight and it's so much more expensive to live than you are getting paid, you're gonna have homelessness. And then all the people get freaked out because there's a bunch of homelessness and we feel like people are coming into our town, and sure they are, because they were priced out of their own town. They're gonna try it here, but it's just, we need more housing, we need affordable housing, we need income-based housing. And then people are housed. We need permanent supportive housing too. I left that off. There's 120 people right there that need permanent supportive housing, and it saves the community money. Permanent supportive housing has been shown to be cheaper than having a chronically homeless person in your community, because they're going to the emergency room all the time, they're being arrested all the time, they're in our jails. It is expensive to have chronically homeless people in your community. When you put them in permanent supportive housing, those number of emergency room and jail visits decreases by like half, and you save money. You save money, you save lives, so we just need to build it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kristen.
I'm gonna speak out if that's okay.
Yep.
As much as I like spending an evening with you guys.
Oh, the next topic is gonna, be a lot of fun. Time to get into our regular agenda, financial reports.
Facetious, so leaving.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Thank you,
for
Kristen.
those of us that enjoy finance. it's pretty good.
Bye, guys.
All right. So, next on our agenda is, the financial report. Karen, are you still with us?
I am. Can you
Alright.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Tell
Yeah.
me what you want me to queue up first. We have 3 months we have both May and June of the official prepared financial reports from our
Mhm.
accounting firm. And then we have a draft of the July data.
I recommend just for efficiency, we go to June,
June, okay.
because that's gonna give us a half year mark.
How do you feel about that, Karen?
I totally agree. I totally
Okay,
agree. I do appreciate your patience with me as I got caught up. Being sick is inconvenience. There's never a good time for it, but I feel like I'm finally caught up. I submitted July's stuff to Kindred on Monday, and then I'm just gonna keep going Monday, Tuesday sometime, but yeah.
okay.
All right. So we are cash wise, we're looking good. And this was at the end of June. We didn't even get our City of Lawrence grant monies until July. So for us to end June at 189, 190, I think that's great. We're doing pretty well there, holding on to our cash and making sure that we're spending it on things that we need, and also making concerted efforts to just be mindful of our cash flow.
Okay.
Not much on liabilities because our our modified cash basis accounting, so not accrual. So I'll talk about that in a second. Let's just go on to our statements of revenues and expenditures. So we are, with donations, we aren't quite as high as where we were last year. Last year, in donations, we had about 81,000. At the end of June, we have 64,000. As was presented at our last board meeting, we were getting ready to launch an appeal. I'm kind of excited to talk about that next, but I'll save it. So we are, yeah, we're about what, 16,000 under donations wise. Grants, we got a big support from the city for 2024. So we are 3 times ahead of where we were last year in terms of that. I know the city recently had a meeting about their budget. I didn't hear back that they were cutting anything for homelessness in general or shelter. So we might want to, we're thinking about it all the time, but I think as part of our board meeting discussions, we might want to focus on that next month, being that we're moving into the 4th quarter. So let's plan for that. Payroll again is going to be, it has been, it continues to be, will always be our biggest expense. It seems that with the living wage increases that we made back in May to agree with our union, averaging out at about $170,000 per month. So that'll help me with forecasting cash flows. I don't think that's too terrible. So let's continue on. Fundraising, we're not spending that much on, but again, I'm going to touch on that in terms of our appeal. Facility wise, we're spending a lot more, but again, that's also based on a lot of the repairs and maintenance that we needed to do at the facility. And then here lately, within the last couple of months, there's been a big push to make sure that we just have the supplies on hand for intake for our guest, just general cleaning supplies, toilet paper, some groceries in there, just stuff like that. And then you'll also notice that as of the end of June and year to date, our direct assistance has gone up. So we've been making a concerted push to expend emergency shelter funding for fiscal year ended 2023. We just received a reimbursement back for about 15,000. And so we were able to get rental applications in, get some of our longer term guests placed and into more permanent housing. So I think James will have more to speak on that later.
What
Chuck has a
what
question.
page are we on right now?
So we're on page. It's the second page of the report. It's actually the 3rd page if you include the cover.
Okay, well, I just was hearing the rental assistance information, which, I mean, that's on page 6, right?
Yeah, for the more line item stuff. So we're just kind of like at the high level categorically
direct
administrative.
assistance.
Yep,
Okay.
direct assistance, facility payroll, fundraising, and programs.
Do you want
So
me
we
to
can-
scroll to another page?
Yeah, let's go ahead and scroll to the next page. Cash flow always looks bad in a month that we're not receiving City of Lawrence money, because we receive that quarterly. So that's all I'll have to say about this page. Because we're essentially modified cash basis, it's gonna look like we're negative. We're in the red. We're not in the red. if you will see, it says cash at the end of the period, 187 to 76. That matches what we have in our bank account at the end of June. But if we want to go on to the next page, let's just skip over June, like month only. Let's go to as of June 30th, because that'll give us a more complete picture of what's been going on with the shelter. I don't think there's anything out of the usual that needs to be discussed for just June. So we're looking at as of June 30th. So we've budgeted through June to have 12,500 in businesses and organization donations. We've got 8,300 there. Individual donations, what we budgeted for, we're about half of where we need to be. And again, going into July, Lacey presented the summer appeal that she was doing and putting together. That's in effect right now. So we're kind of just talking, we're behind on talking about where we're at right now. So otherwise, yeah, we're in terms of funding what we've budgeted for, we're 82,000 under where we would like to be. I'm a little optimistic about where we can go, especially with how this summer appeal is going. Again, I'll touch on that when we get to it. So let's go ahead and start talking about the operating expenses.
Jeff
So
wants to ask the question first.
okay,
And I agree that, a lot of this, there's donation categories that we're up in and some that we're down in. I guess the one question I have on this particular page is the ESG grant.
Okay.
30,000 and.
So far, it's zero.
right. Okay. So I'm glad you asked that, because I have my
Ridiculous.
notes like all over the place. So we have submitted for ESG reimbursement about 15,000, so half of that. And that's not shown as of June 30th because of our accounting basis, but also because of, a couple other things. We do have that money. We put that in our budget because we knew that we would need to have it expended by then. We just had not had our rapid rehousing emphasis until May, June of this year. And all of that needs to be expended by end of September. So we're about halfway there through spending as of today. I think we've got some more rents that are going to be paid out. So I know we have like a couple thousand more that we've expended. So Kim and James seem to be confident that we can get those funds fully expended by the contract end period of September 30th. And so then you'll see that 30,000 come up in starting in August.
To just clarify, it's a reimbursement-based grant. So the money has to be spent and then we can request it back.
Right.
So we've already done half of that, and you'll see that reflected. Is it in July or August? I know we just got it. Did we submit it at the end of July or beginning of August?
At the beginning of August. So you won't see the revenues on it until our August, so next month, because we'll be back on track and I'll be reporting on August. So yeah, so we'll have cash flow there in August. We will have cash expenditures for ESG and all of the DA associated categories. So the DA, direct assistance, the majority of those ESG funds are going to be spent on the housing assistance, rental assistance, utility assistance, security deposit, and rental arrears. So we had a few guests that had housing, I'm guessing, and in order to keep them housed, we assisted them with rent. Is that correct, James?
I don't think we do any homeless prevention. Is that what you're talking about?
I think, because it seemed like, yeah, forgive me, because I'm totally I'm on the finance side.
all the rental assistance we provide is people that are unhoused. So we provide rental assistance when people don't have houses and they find them. The thing about the ESG grant is it looks like we have income of 30,000, but we really don't, because that 30,000 comes in, but it also goes out to our guests. So it's not something that will show up as we're receiving, because we're gonna spend it. When we get it in, we're gonna spend it. We know we have to spend it, we can't keep it. So that 30,000 is going out to, I guess what I like to get to a point is where we match that. And we're getting 30,000, but what we use for that 30,000 to be reimbursed on, I'd like to turn around and put that right back into more housing, so we could double the people we serve with that 30,000. But we're not there yet. We might be able to do something like that next year. But right now, not yet, but.
Yeah, and specifically with the ESG grant, we can't spend it on anything else. It has to be spent on the guest and assisting them getting more permanent housing. And so
The
I-
items that are listed in the expense as the rental assistance, for instance, and the rental arrears and those.
Those are eligible for ESG.
Okay.
Yeah. Not all of it is ESG, because sometimes we do have direct assistance where we had a $10,000 grant from Maximus for client direct assistance that we can help individuals with things that they need. It has to go directly to our guests. Like just today, I approved one of our guests is actually enrolled full-time in school. I think it's in Johnson County. And they've been transporting to Johnson County by, I forget how they go, by bus or by somehow. And they needed a book because their financial assistance has to come to. So we're gonna use $250 to buy the book they need, because that's something that they need, because I'm for people being educated. I really think that we need to move them to Johnson County, because for somebody to be unhoused, living at the village to go to school, that's too many negatives that it doesn't, somebody might not be successful in that situation. In order to make them more apt to be successful is to get them housed closer to the school that they go to. Just makes sense. So we're gonna try. They are in a rapid housing program and we're working on it, so.
I'll add to that point too, is I'd say the closer they are to their education, I know a lot of colleges, when I went and got my master's, one of the emphases they had was to make sure that we had a job lined up when we were done with our schooling. And so to James's point, the closer they are to having a resource like that can get them more secure job, or, more well-paying job for a skill that they might be learning or whatever, that's extremely important. Of course, we don't want to hold on to them in our community, in our shelter. We want to be able to see them go off and hopefully not have to use services again. Okay, so we've been spending a lot on general supplies. I know in June it's been asked of me if we could go over budget just to kind of establish replenish what we needed, and then also establish an inventory of items so that we weren't running out of items and then needing to make emergency purchases. They would just be available for our guests, for our DSAs to have to be able to provide to our guests. So that has been an emphasis the last couple of months, is just establishing an inventory of supplies. Buying in bulk in general is cheaper anyway. And so Megan's been doing a really good job of putting together what the shelter and the village have needed, and getting those orders in and having supplies purchased. Yeah.
So I've got just a couple of particular questions on this, the expenses, and I guess I'm hoping that it is simply a change of categorization, but I'm looking then down to page 9 under the general liability insurance. and then the commercial property coverage insurance, a line above that.
Mhm.
Is it plausible that what we had originally budgeted as commercial property coverage is now listed under that general liability expense amount? I mean, I'm assuming that we have not dropped our insurance coverage on the building. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It is just a categorization thing.
Okay.
Um, one of my projects is to go through our general ledger through the year and kind of reclass things that need to get reclassed. You know, I'm looking on here. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I had coded, we bought specifically postage and I coded it to postage. But I'm realizing that we've bought a whole lot of other office supplies and I just kind of lumped them in with office supplies too. So it's more so we could work together on what we deem as what we need to see as line item wise on our financial statements. Because like to me, you know, $120, it is a big deal on ours because we've got a very restricted type of income. But in my accounting brain, it's like it's a non-issue. Like is postage could be considered office supplies. You could combine those together. We're still a little bit over budget in general with office supplies, but it's not, you know, it shakes out. But like I said, it's one of my projects is to go through the GL and just kind of make sure that things are properly classified from when I was going through and getting things entered for the year. That's something that I need to be doing routinely anyway.
One other item that raised a question to me on this is under the, and I almost am questioning whether I'm personally responsible on this one. The loan interest budgeted amount versus actual, because I almost swear that I was working with Melanie on putting this budget together. How did we miss that amount so badly? Well, I mean, it's $2,000 difference, but I
Right.
mean, the interest on, I'm assuming that loan is solely the property loan. Is it?
Yeah, you're correct.
Is that
And
a
that'll be,
fixed, that's a fixed interest? I mean, we're not on a variable interest loan, are we?
we shouldn't be.
No.
I need to get back with the city and see if they can give me um basically where we're at snapshot wise. What do they have for us in terms of interest received for this year? And then do we need to make an adjustment? Do I need to reach out to Kindred and have them make a book adjustment so that we're matching? And we should be matching. But as far as loan interest goes, I believe that's a journal entry that's made by Kindred. So again, I need to double check, need to go back and just make sure that we're on track to where we need to be.
Do you feel like you're gonna be able to get these adjustments done, pretty soon? Like, I'm just thinking through when we start working on our budget for next year. It'd be nice to know that, kind of everything that is coded properly, so we're anticipating like, okay, are we gonna spend the same amount next year?
Right. Right.
It's important.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm thinking we need to start that conversation next month about like
Yep.
what our budget's gonna look like.
Yep. Nope, I agree. I agree.
I'm gonna keep scrolling.
I think that
We
should
have
be the end of
one.
it right there.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any other questions about that before we moved on?
No, I'm good on that one.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay. Update
All
on
right.
the fundraising?
Yes.
Um,
So Lacey provided me with a listing of or some data really on our summer appeal. So and she gave me some notes And the summer appeal mailers were mailed out, I want to say after July 22nd. July 22nd is when the email appeal went out. It was also the first day that we received donation for it. So I went ahead and she's got some data so far. Let me just report on her data. So the total that we've received since the appeal started through today is about $8,000. So just from the appeal, we've generated $8,000 in donations. Most of that has come from the mailers. So 29 donors have responded through the mail, 8 people have responded through our website, and 4 have responded through a different campaigning website called Give Lively. I'm not familiar with that, but I'm thinking that's related to our social media campaign. I'm not sure. But she
There's
started,
an option, there was an option to kind of leverage if someone wanted to kind of help raise money. They could create their
oh,
own
okay,
fundraising
okay.
page. Yeah, I've been trying to like, test each of those options, so I did that and posted it on my Facebook.
How's it going?
Last I checked, it was just one donor for $26, so. Janet Lynn.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Okay.
all right.
Thanks, Janet Lynn.
Yeah, thank you. It works.
Yeah. So, and on August 13th, she says that the phone campaign began. So, thank you calls have been initiated.
Okay.
I wanted to provide a couple more statistics on our campaigning. So, just from July 22nd, when we first started, through the 31st, we had in normal, no one saw the appeal campaign donations of about $1,700. With the campaign in place, $840 additionally. So it's about half. That's pretty impressive to me. And then in August, from August 1st through today, we had $6,800 generated from the campaign. In just donations unrelated to the campaign, $1,600. My husband
It
is
seems,
sleeping on the couch, so if you hear my dog barking, I'm so sorry.
okay. I feel like it was about this time a year ago that Melanie pushed out an appeal. That I don't know how, productive it was in terms of the dollar amount, but I am curious, like. Since we're so below, kind of the historical trend, like what's being done differently this year? Or how would we explain like why we're, I think, underperforming? That just kind of puzzles me. And it's great to see that there's a bump right now, but I think overall, like, we're significantly below the historical trend. And that's not just like last year, but it's also like going back several years, and we took a look at our budget. I asked Karen to fill in on when we approved the budget. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Where did I put it?
I do have some information about something that might be relevant.
Okay. I had asked her to update our budget document with the end of year actuals for 2023. So last year, there was $191,899 raised through individual donations. And organizations was 19,905. So what we budgeted was 25,000 for organization donations and 180,000 for individuals, which if you look at the historical actuals, you know, 2021 was 253,000. 174 the next year, 178,000 next year, 191. So it feels like we didn't. We were, it was fair for us to come up with 180 as a projection for our budget for this year. Yet it just feels like something is different.
Well, I think,
And
The thing that's different is that we got more money from the city.
yeah,
A lot of people,
so then that would be one thing that's significantly different, right?
that's the
If the city,
significant difference.
if that contract has increased our amount, then people feel maybe less inclined.
Yeah.
Is that the?
That's, and I'll have Mercedes talk about donations. And I think donations and donors go kind of hand in hand. Some people give money, some people give in kind. And she'll talk about some of the things that donors have told her about why they're not donating as much now because of that.
Mercedes?
Yeah, she's gonna be on,
Okay.
during my report, I'm gonna have her
Okay.
do a donation and volunteer report, so she'll talk about that. So I think you're right, because I've been thinking about what would cause that to be down, and the only thing I can think is that now we have a bigger part of our funding coming from the city, which supposedly was supposed to answer all the questions about not having enough funding. So if you look back when we didn't have that funding, we were supported by people that said, we can't let the shelter go under, we have to give more. And I think, like you said, Melanie did a lot of donor engagement individually to get more donations and kept that, doing what she could to keep the money coming in. And now the urgency hasn't been the same.
Yeah, I think there is a different sense of urgency.
Yeah.
But it's even going before Melanie. The historical data was much, you know, there was a clear trend, like. It wasn't just when Melanie was interim, it was before then, you know, 200 and some $1,000 raised in 2020, was it, or 2021? So
2021.
2021, so
Has the funding from the city been increasing every year?
no,
You know?
No.
it just increased massively last year.
Right.
yeah.
But I
So-
mean, I think what you're describing, I think is happening with a lot of nonprofits. You know, some of it had to do with change in tax policy if, you know, people's, you know, more people went to the standard deduction where, charitable donations didn't matter. And so that kind of took a lot of the wind out of that. And I think beyond that, you know, we're hearing a lot of response nationally, people saying, well, you know, at least in the food and dining industry, we're hearing people talk about the cost of food being high and cut back on, you know, McDonald's is doing value meals and Target's cutting prices on items to try to get customers. So I think that sort of a cautionary approach from, you know, from individual contributors makes sense to me. I don't see that as out of the norm. And I think the other thing that we recognize with Lawrence compared to even someplace like Topeka, we don't have big corporate entities that could be called on for sponsorship.
Well, those business organizational donations, you know, they've never been a huge share. I mean, historically, it's 21,000, 15,000, 23,000, 19. So we budgeted for 25. And, you know, we're at like 4,000 so far this year. So that one's significantly lower too, but we didn't expect it to be huge. I just find it curious, and I feel like it would help us to think through for next year. Like, do we need to dramatically alter what we expect, or do we need to think how we, you know, what we do different to bring those numbers up?
I guess the way I look at it is the vote in November will be an interesting component. And if the sales tax proposal passes as is, every family in Lawrence will be donating $25 to our finances.
It's an interesting way to put it.
It's, you know, there will be a involuntary donation in some sense, but every family will be donating $25, so everybody's in on it, you know?
I do want to go back to Chuck's point though about the tax benefits of donations, because there were a couple years where on your tax return you didn't have to itemize, but you could take advantage of the charitable contribution deduction. And that literally was only like 2 or 3 years. I know the next time there's a lot of things that are expiring IRS tax wise in 2025. And so those hopefully we'll get a lot of lobbying in general, not just but a lot of lobbying from nonprofit organizations saying, can we have that back? Because it is a little bit of a nice incentive for people to want to donate and think, oh, well, like get a little bit of a deduction on my taxes if I donate money, I have a receipt for it. But right now,
So-
there's no real benefit for the majority of people to contribute to do charitable contributions unless it's just coming from the goodness of their heart. You have to be like you'd have to be in a really high tax bracket for it to
Yeah.
for it to be beneficial. And I'm looking at those tax returns right now in my full time. So
Mhm. Well, what I'm hearing everyone say is there's, probably just the bigger trend around people donating less. So we need to consider that, and I think maybe that is a way to think forward for next year. Like, what should we be expecting? For, given dramatic change this year, how do we think differently for next year? It's disappointing to think that that's where the trend is going. And I'd prefer to think there's a way we could do something different, but I appreciate that if it's actually a bigger trend, that's maybe gonna be more challenging than we might think.
I think we're doing a, good job in like putting together dots and maybe speculation, but this speculatory, is there a report that comes from someone who's been talking directly with the sponsors or the donors recently who have donated? And has there been conversations and has been like, well, I can't do this as much as I did a couple years ago? Because we're seeing a trend in a lot of things, it's that people don't have money, like everything's too expensive. That's the trend, right? Like that's
Right.
keeping people out of donating, so we really can't speculate.
We
about
started
that.
to make phone calls. I've been making some phone calls, talking to donors that have recently donated, and we're gonna keep doing that. Not just with people that recently donated, we're just gonna start doing a regular routine of calls to talk to people and thank them and ask questions.
I thought maybe you said, maybe I heard you say mentioning Mercedes and
Yeah,
they were gonna
she
do a
does
report.
the volunteers and
Okay.
donations.
It sounds like we
and
better
kind donations.
Get done with this report, we can move on to executive director report. Is there anything else you wanted to share about the fundraising update?
yeah, just that of we've got some recurrent donors that are amazing. They donate normally, and then they also donated in response to the summer appeal. So we had 10 individuals that did that. And then new individuals that have donated 30 unique from the summer appeal alone. And just from the dates July 22nd through August 22nd, so today. But I think Lacey's got some more in-depth information on that, like on, you know, if they donated a couple years ago and then they stopped donating and then they've come back in response to the appeal. I know that she's been putting some of that information together, but as far as reporting on this, I'm happy to see that there has been a good response to the summer appeal.
Thank you. You want to maybe briefly give an introduction about the professional employer organization conversations we've been having at the exec committee?
Yes, so our first PEO, professional employer organization that we reached out to, it's called Next Step. They're out of Tulsa. What they specialize in is HR solutions. Primarily, the biggest two benefits that I see going to a PEO is we don't have a dedicated benefits administrator. We also don't have the numbers in our organization to really negotiate with a healthcare broker to get us better rates on our health insurance. And so what we've been talking about, and the whole reason for the union organizing was to kind of just get better benefits in order for us to have that retention rate that we need to see in order for us to do the work. So going with PEO puts us part of a much larger group. They assist other small organizations and nonprofits in obtaining better benefits at a better rate. They also provide payroll servicing. They do a whole HR platform, so time clocks with the payroll, and then you'd sign up for your benefits through there. A lot of like larger organizations are able to have some kind of like corporate discount. They would have a benefits administrator on hand that would be able to collect information like that, or discounts, so like travel discounts and pet insurance, things like that. So as part of wanting to retain employees and also creating more efficiency with our payroll process and helping Melanie out, a lot of her process is very segmented, from job postings to onboarding and all that. What a PEO would do is just kind of centralize it and make it more efficient. It would be equivalent in terms of administrative costs. It would be equivalent to hiring like another administrative assistant with Next Step. I'm in the process of getting a proposal from another PEO called Accent. And they even have something that's really interesting to me, and that's having employees who are interested or need an employee advance to be able to draw it down on their own without getting HR involved. So that's kind of attractive too. So there's just a lot of benefits from having us just handle it in-house. We have Kindred process our payroll. Everything is very segmented the way it is. We were going to PEO. We have somebody that's supporting us with workers' compensation, any HR benefits or HR disputes. And with the fact that we're dealing with a union, they would be able to assist us without us having to go to our attorney every single time. So there's just a lot of pros in that direction of us going. We would be able to focus on other things like fundraising in-house, and really just kind of not have all of this stuff everywhere, because it literally is everywhere we have it organized, but it's just in different places. With having a PEO, they have a centralized platform. It would be in one place. It would just it would make us more effective.
Well, yeah, haven't heard you mention is the retirement plan.
Oh, and the retirement plan. Yes, yes, yes. So we need to have a retirement plan implemented. And with both of these PEOs, they would also be implementing the retirement plan for us.
Which is
And
kind of what got this started was for the union contract, we have to have a retirement plan in place by January 1st. So
Yep.
I think I just wanted to get it out there for the whole board to hear about it, because we've been talking about this for a couple months now in the exec committee. And it helped me to do a little research on my own to like, what is a PEO? I hadn't heard of it before. Essentially, it's just professional HR that you contract for. There are different levels of it, different ways that they can support you. But I think would add I think we're growing as an organization, and it kind of brings us to a level that our staff would probably, enjoy. Having that interface with a legitimate benefits administrator. It also probably gives more stability, like as staff turnover at the shelter. Not that I'm expecting that or whatever, but like it just establishes like we have a organization that we lean on to do that work, and sort of way we do already with our accountants. So I don't know if there's any discussion or comments really, but just wanted to plant the seed so that if you were wanting to do research, you could do that. And I don't know, I think we're still waiting on that second proposal. We'll hopefully have something that we can bring back from that discussion.
I know and you talked about this at our last executive board, is that sometimes we're always looking for cost savings, but sometimes this might not be a cost savings, it might be cost effective to do a PEO because we get more benefits out of it.
Right.
And the liability goes down on us, and to have a professional agency to do those things, they control all of that. Right now, we have one person doing a lot of those things, and it's just so hard to keep up with.
Yeah, it's burdensome. It's extremely burdensome for one person to be able to
Yeah.
take that on. It would be more expensive for us to hire someone dedicated to that and then have an assistant than it is to have this outsourced. A
Right.
couple of the other benefits that they have is so the employment practices liability insurance. It doesn't cost much, but to be part of a larger organization, it would bring that down significantly. Also with the workers' compensation, same thing. But also I mentioned healthcare insurance. So we just don't have the numbers to be able to negotiate a better insurance rate. And so we're, from my understanding, we're paying more, our employees and the organization itself is paying more for maybe less benefits than can be enjoyed in a larger organization. And so being part of a PEO would give us that advantage of paying lower insurance rates, both on the employee employer side, to have better benefits.
Thanks.
What are we thinking about budgeting for that? I hear that there's some bids out, but what are we looking at as far as like?
Do we have do
Yeah.
you have a sense of that from the first proposal? I don't know if we want to have that shared out publicly yet.
I feel like I would rather discuss that when we have the second
Okay.
bid,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
I do think anyway this is above the threshold for exec committee and needs to be put before board approval anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
It'll come
s-
in.
yeah,
I just wanted
so
to make sure had a chance to start thinking about it, understanding it, doing your own research. I mean, I quickly dug in and I was like, the more I learned, the more I thought, wow, this is really probably a right move.
But I mean, I'm just looking at a quick glance from ADP at saying, yeah, PEO costs between 2% and 12% of wages. That's
That's
a
an
pretty big
interesting-
span, you
Is that-
know?
Is that similar to what you've looked at, Karen? That there's they charge a percent of wages?
no,
Well,
it is-
so
it is-
ADP does that per wages, but so from our first proposal with Next Step, their administrative fee is per employee and it gets locked in at 4 years. And so we know what that is. I don't want to put that out because again, we're not committed to them because
Mhm.
again, we're still soliciting proposals in order to put
Mhm.
before the board. This is something that is a big deal. It is, but it affects budget in a big way, that I think you all need to be on board with.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked her to put this in a report, because you know, we've talked about it enough exec that it feels legitimate, like we need to advance this idea. And I didn't want it to, I wanted to have plenty of time to start learning about it. So, all right, anything else? I know we're running tight on time, so. Any questions of Karen before we can move on?
So I guess we've got no more questions, but maybe some homework we've got to do looking at PEO.
I think, I mean,
Maybe
that's,
a little more
It would be
familiar.
I
beneficial.
thought it'd be helpful
Yeah,
to get familiar with the concept, you know,
yeah, I agree.
it was new to me, so I did my own research. Just wanted to get it out there for you guys. Executive Director report.
I got 5 minutes.
I'm sorry.
So. Let's start off to segue with the donations, because I think that's something that we're talking about. Mercedes, are you still available?
Yes, I am. Sorry, Si's in the back, so he might be kind of noisy, so I apologize.
Do you have your report pulled up to share?
I don't know if I can share my screen.
I just made you a co-host, Mercedes.
Okay, let me run inside and I will get it pulled up.
Okay,
Cause I do have it, but.
Yeah,
or do you have it on your screen? Can you pull it up? You can share.
I have it. She redid the copy to make it more legible.
Oh,
If you,
I will get it.
if you. forward it to me,
okay, I apologize. I can go ahead and start talking about it, but we have seen, we saw in the first, year when we had the cold snap, that we had a pretty large, influx of donations related to the weather emergency. So things like hats, gloves, scarves, wool socks. Charlie, you might just have to let me in on my laptop.
okay. Did you rejoin? Oh, I see you there. Joining now. Give it a moment. All right, and then, oops. You jumped. All right. Okay, can you share now? We're not hearing you.
Can you share Mercedes? You're muted.
Okay, there we go.
We hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Let me get the report pulled up.
So Mercedes talking about donations of.
Of in-kind goods.
Okay.
So all the things that.
That's
we-
helpful. I was confused a little
Yeah.
earlier when you mentioned
So
donations.
it's still donors.
Yep,
Some people donate in kind. And so when people donate, we offer the ability to give them a donation letter so they can use it for tax purposes, and they can do that. And Mercedes had a lot of information about why donations might be down, and I thought it'd be important that you start getting this report on donations along with the volunteers that we serve, because that's actually a form of donation. Also, people volunteer their time.
yes, it is.
So.
Yeah, and I can share with the board, if you want like hours of donation, how that's kind of changing as well. But as you can see on my screen here, so in the first quarter, we had a pretty big influx, like I said, of weather-related needs. So that again is like hats, gloves, scarves, hand warmers, those types of things. We also had an influx of clothing, which was predominantly coats, sweatshirts, sweats, and then winter snow boots. And then you can see in this graph, kind of, if you're more of a visual person over numbers, that we've been on a steady decline. When I've talked to agencies that have donated to us, and our regular donors that drop off in-kind donations, they've started to ask the question of, well, then why do you still need my donation of deodorant?
The time is 7:30 and the library is closing at 8 p.m. We ask any patron needing a library
why you
card
need
to come to the
the
account desk
donation
immediately, since we will stop
deodorant
issuing
or
new cards
shampoo,
in
conditioner,
15 minutes.
things like that, because the
Children or
community isn't
teens needing
realizing
help, call it for a
that
ride.
so
Should go
much
to
of
the
the funds
children's
that
desk
come
now.
from the city and the
Thank you.
county are going directly back to guests and back into the building. So for facility maintenance, things like that. And so we've seen that as that money comes in and it's made public, obviously, that we're not getting in those donations. Cause like, as of right now, LCS is having to compensate for the deodorant that we need, the shower gel that we need, the shampoo, other hygiene, so feminine care hygiene items, the Depends, those types of things that our guests utilize every day, that we go through pretty quickly, especially now that we're serving more people. But we're seeing that we're not getting in those donations. And even when we put out the pleas on Facebook or in our newsletter, we're just not seeing a return like we were, say last year or even at the beginning of the year. But yeah, so the community just feels as if it's, the LCS is getting a ton of money from the city and county. They don't need our donation anymore. And unfortunately, that's just, as we all know, not the case.
We just did an order of underwear, which we have to have underwear. A lot of folks don't have underwear. And when they do, they don't have a way to wash them consistently. So we have people that come in nightly that need underwear, and we just have to have it. So we had to buy some. So we're starting to see us having to do some of those.
So this kind of goes to our previous conversation.
That's why I thought it was important to see.
The narrative might be that the city is now putting in more money. So that we don't need as many items donated or money donated. Thanks for presenting that, Mercedes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mercedes. Just some highlights on August the 9th. We had a staff appreciation day. It was a wonderful turnout. We had a great time. Charlie came and said some words. Kim and I mentioned every staff person's name and talked a little bit about the job they do, how they do their job, and we had t-shirts, we had bags. Mercedes and Megan really put it together. It was wonderful. We had a great time. It's something that we definitely want to do again. We do have certificates for all of our board members. So the ones that are here will get theirs, the ones that are not won't.
Could I add just a comment about it? I thought, it was a great event. Thanks, Megan, for your work to organize it. Thanks, Mercedes, for your work to organize it. I know when I got on the board last year, there was discussion with that board about trying to do something to show the appreciation of staff, because it's like, that's where the work is being done. And it was just, I was so happy to see it finally happen.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing that through and having it happen. I also was just really impressed by the attention to each individual employee. I appreciate you guys took the time to do
It
that.
felt really good. That was.
Yeah, it felt very genuine and it felt heartfelt. I hope that staff understood that, felt that themselves.
They did.
So I hope it helps to build the kind of culture that we need to see at LCS. I thought it was a great event, and I'd love to see it done every year. It definitely seems
We
like
will definitely do it again.
that's
Great
the
venue.
least that can be done to show their support and confidence in staff.
Thank you. We had rave reviews from all the staff. They were really happy to have that, and they felt appreciated, and that was good. It was a real good event to have everybody in the same room. I actually met one staff member that I had never met before, and he started when we opened the village. He was one of the initial staff there, and he works overnights. So I got to meet when I was there overnight, and his schedule was, I don't think he worked 3 or 4 days in a row. I just never got to meet him. So it's first time meeting him. Great guy. So it was great to do that. I have all the demographics and things in there. I don't think I'm gonna be able to go over that. One of the things I will talk about, I see it's on our list, the advisory committee report. We had a meeting yesterday with the advisory board. This was our second meeting, and we've only had 3 consistent board advisory board members show up. One person did say that they're gonna have to drop off. You remember what their name was?
Jennifer, Dr. Jennifer.
Well, I can get back with you with that information. So what I wanted to let Christina and Elizabeth know is that from the applicants that we already have, did you wanna select another one, or do you want, how do you wanna do that? Because we can't kind of get going forward without all of our board members present. So what we were planning to do yesterday was reiterate what we did the first time, if everybody showed up, and then pursue our agenda going forward, but we can't do that yet. So we're kind of on hold until we get at least the original six members. So we still have 5, and we're gonna re-engage with the 2 that have not come yet. And but we wanted to say we do need another one based on applicants, and we can meet, if you want to set up a meeting, we can meet and discuss that.
I think that would probably work best. Elizabeth is not here today, so maybe more talking or asynchronously
Absolutely.
about how that we can. The question is it still a live and open application process now?
It's still posted on the
It's
website.
still live.
And,
Yeah.
and the board, the people on the board have been recommending people to apply. So we're still asking people to apply, put in the application, so we still wanted to find out, how do you want it to go about, getting more members on that. We have an idea about the additional members, but that was only 3 members saying what they wanted to do, and so we didn't never have the full 6. So I said, we really need the full 6 before we start making decisions that kind of change the structure of the board. We can't do that until we really get started. So that's where we're at now. So.
Yeah, I'm curious about, I know that we had gone through the list and made the recommendations based upon the experience and the answers. Kind of curious about the one that dropped off, if it was the one that we, really.
I'll give you.
Probably, okay.
We'll send
But yeah, I'm also in alignment with networking. I know that it's really great to have a network of people who either know each other,
Mhm.
working in the board and working together. So maybe asking the existing 5 if they have a recommendation. of a
They
person.
do.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and then have them submit that too, but I'm happy to have a conversation with Elizabeth and see what she would like to do, going forward.
Okay.
And we work together with you on that.
Great. I also sent a letter of support. Charlie wanted me to let the board know that I sent a letter of support to the Johnson County Homeless Services, I would say center or shelter. They want to do a homeless services center that includes a shelter in Lenexa. And so they're having some setbacks, I believe, getting jumping off. I since met by email with the assistant city manager of Lenexa. I provided them with our line item budget for 24, so he can get an example of what we use to run our shelter. Because when I saw their budget or potential budget, I think it was less than $1 million, and I knew that wasn't gonna work. But they've asked for it, and I'm willing to walk them through what we're doing, and even I think they wanna come out and tour the facilities just to get an idea of what we're doing. So I'm gonna stay connected with that to do that. I have examples of that if you wanna pass it around.
I think I really appreciate James writing the letter to the Lenexa Planning Commission. I
Yeah,
think
and I'm
is
gonna
how it
send the
started.
same letter to the city
And then-
council.
Yeah, so just recognizing, especially our neighbors, like we need to do everything we can to encourage them to help us all address the problem, so we can't be the only ones in our area.
Based on their point in time count, I think they had 250 homeless
Mm.
in Johnson County, so I put that in the letter, so you needed shelters.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be real specific, but just kind of generalize why it's important
Yeah.
to support our neighbors, because we do share people and services, so that's important.
It's important, they reached out to you to ask, is that what happened, or?
No, we,
With how that connection?
Jill reached out and asked, made sure we were kind of aware of it and asked if we might provide some letter of support, and James offered to do that. But he's, I think, gone beyond just the letter, he's also consulted with them a bit to help them.
I don't think I have anything else that is pressing, just the demographics, I was gonna go over some of the program outcomes,
Just maybe a quick report on how things are going at Allen and maybe where, if we're still seeing any intent on, what do we call them now, Carl, 24 or 32?
House 32. So with that, so I met with the city last Friday. They came out and we talked about how the funding was gonna go. And so we have the CDBG money that is federal funding that we don't want to associate with Pallet Outback because the Pallet Outback is gonna be city money, it's different money, it's not federal money. And to use federal money, there's different regulations, especially when you're constructing things from the ground up. And so we had to do 2 applications for a special use permit. So to separate what we do on the inside from what we do on the outside, because it's different pots of money. So we didn't have to have the federal regulations affect the outside part, just the inside, which we're not building. It's remodeling, it's a different set of needs for that. So we did that. We talked to the consultants. They're willing to do different applications. So we did that. I signed my owner, what is the letter that they wanted me to do? The owner, I forget what it was. But I signed it, submitted it to them. And so I think we might be scheduled for next Monday with the planning commission, but I'm not sure. We're still waiting to hear when that's gonna go before the planning commission. And then once it clears the planning commission, we go before the city commission.
So have we been invoiced yet for any of the work?
No,
Any?
well, yes, we have, I think, yes, we have. Karen, do you remember the invoice I submitted to you? I think it was.
You submitted an invoice, but we don't have an
Ah.
obligation to pay right now because there's no.
No, I think I paid it.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is.
What I paid was the application fee for the special use permit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which should be coming out of that one. I did pay that because we don't want to hold that
And
up.
that's nominal, I'm sure.
I think it was what, $800 or something, Karen?
No,
Yes,
I'm more
something like
concerned
that.
about,
No,
we
the money that
we
we're.
said yes to this
Contract.
contract with the engineering firm
It
and
was $171,000 or something like that.
did that. Trusting the city's gonna, provide an addendum to our contract. Cause that wasn't in the initial contract,
Right, right.
so,
I think all that's still in the works. So
okay,
that money has already been budgeted and it's not a part of the budget talks that I know of. So. Yeah, this is a really different process because I feel like a passenger in the process,
sure,
but I'm actually the driver of the process, but I'm just a passenger, so. But I
Okay.
think we're still projected to have everything up and going by winter. By the time we do winter emergency, we should be having, Pilot 32 should be up.
is there a number been determined just yet?
That's right, how many
Is it,
pallets?
I know we talked,
I think it's down to 24 now,
24.
it was 25. But I think it's 24 because I think one of them is gonna be used as an office somewhere, so. Spread.
okay,
And general operation aspects at the Pallet Village, things, the new community.
So, we currently have 45 residents to date, and we have one individual scheduled moving next week. We have 4 additional interviews for services set up. 85% of our participants are actively working with case management. Everybody receives case management services, but 85% are active, meaning they're continually engaged with the case management.
Attention library patrons, the time is 7:45 and the library will be closing in 15 minutes. No new library cards will be issued tonight. Any children or teens needing help calling for a ride home should go to the children's desk now. Public computer sessions will end in 5 minutes. Please bring anything you plan to borrow to the nearest checkout station at this time. Thank you.
In the past month, we've transitioned 3 individuals into permanent housing. with 4 more working closely with rapid housing case managers. One of the things that we don't just do rapid housing in the shelter, we do it with the village. And so we have case managers, our housing stability case manager and our rapid housing case manager. I think they go to the village twice a week. They're on site at the village twice a week, but they're connected as much as they need to be, but they're actively over there twice a week. We're working closely with the homeless outreach team. And we have a waiting list of 80 individuals.
You said 80?
880.
Okay.
Yeah. We have, and it's a challenge because we have a 6% exit rate. Thank you, Kim. The exit rate is primarily due to safety violations and aggressive behavior. One of the things that we're seeing a current trend on is people disabling our smoke detectors. I sent a article. Who sent me that article? Was it you, Charlie? No, somebody sent me an article about Pallet Village catching on fire with 1 unit, and it spread so fast it burned a lot of them. And I continue to stress to our staff that, and I rewrote in the operations plan, smoke detectors, if they're tampered with, we have to address that immediately, because the only reason to tamper with the smoke detector is so it doesn't go off. And you don't want to go off if you're smoking some type of smoke in the cabinet. That's a really big deal. So I sent that to them just to reiterate that we need to know if they're being tampered with. We need to know that. And so we're exiting people because that's a safety violation. If they've been warned not to do it and they continue to do it, we have to exit them, because I'd rather exit somebody alive than to have them out of there and have multiple people. Because when people are covering up, and what they've learned to do, I believe, is disconnect a wire that you can put it back up and it looks like it's fine, but it won't function. And so we're finding that. So I have somebody go through and check them all. We replaced the ones that were like that, and we're actually putting different models in there. So we're working on that. That's a real big thing.
That's expensive too, to have them go in and check it. So I've
Yeah.
seen those bills.
We also, the construction of the new clubhouse it's up. It's not insulated yet, but the structure is actually up. I'm going over next week with the chef, and we're gonna look at how to outfit it to maximize the ability to serve meals over there. I think that's gonna be important, how we outfit that. We are running out of storage space at the village, like Karen talked about how we want to get more supplies. One of the things that I identified was that it's more expensive to run out of something and have to get it immediately, because you just get enough to get by and then you have to order again. So we're trying to get a stock of things, and the village has different toilet paper than anybody else. We have to get RV toilet paper because of the way it's set up. That's more expensive. And our ADA restrooms go down at least 2 or 3 times a week, because people are putting things in the toilet itself. And the way it operates, it spends something to kind of break up whatever's going in there. I'll just put it like that. So it's easier to compost. And if you put something in there, it stops that blade from going around, and then it floods. And so this is happening 2 or 3 times a week. And one of the things that we get a lot of complaints from our guests about the way the restrooms are unclean. But we clean them, but we don't use them. And so I'm thinking one of the things that has to happen is we have to educate people that they should be cleaning their own restrooms, I believe. Somehow we should do that. We can't do that because they won't get clean if that's the case. But we're continuing to clean them. We're continually having the city come out and call somebody out. It's really expensive, and we haven't gotten into it. We're gonna get to an end to it, but we're just working on how we do that.
Who's paying that cost?
The city, in our contract, the city is responsible for the maintenance of the village. And I'm glad.
Maybe that's a lesson learned for, how
Yeah.
we do things
It is.
with the little pallets
Yeah.
behind us.
It is, it's expensive. I think what we're gonna do behind us, we're gonna get different types. I mean, maybe the same types of restrooms, but they'll be better able suited. And I think, they're looking at, the Palette has designed their own, restrooms. I think they're looking at either those or some other type, and we're not gonna, they're gonna be different than what we have now because it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. And, that's all I have on that.
All right, we've lost quorum 3 minutes ago. Not that we have any decisions to be made,
Okay.
but Rebecca had to sign off at 7:48. Okay, well, we definitely went a little late tonight. Thanks for staying. I don't think we need to have any other reports, so
That was some good information at point in time. I would really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
yeah, that was good. I think, good discussion on the financial report as well.
Yep.
Well, then we can't take a vote on adjourning. We'll just have to adjourn. Call a meeting at 7:51.